Today, another example of military families caught in the crosshairs of the immigration crackdown. Jose Serrano is an active duty soldier, has been for 27 years. He says his wife, Daisy Rivera Ortega, was arrested last week while keeping an appointment at an immigration office. Now, the government claims she entered the country illegally in 2016 and has been under a deportation order since 2019. But a family attorney says she had a valid work permit, and a judge blocked her removal to El Salvador. Now her husband says she could be sent to Mexico, where she has no family, no ties.
They don't tell you anything. They just arrest my wife and live with my wife. I don't really understand why. Because she follow the rules of immigration by the T since day one. It's not the army, sir. It's ICE. ICE is out of control right now.
Joining us now is immigration attorney Alan Orr and MS contributor and senior writer at the Dispatch, David Drucker. Alan, ICE has historically been lenient when it comes to families of military members, but there's this new policy that states military service alone does not exempt aliens from the consequences of violating U.S. immigration laws. And I just wonder what you're seeing out there.
I think we're seeing that legal pathways of immigration are shrinking 2.5 times as fast as this sort of undocumented enforcement, which means this administration is actually making it harder for people to remain legally within the country. And that officer includes that. Beyond just being a military member, she also was doing the things that were required by the immigration court. The court allowed her to stay. The court allowed her to have work authorization. She was showing up at a court appointment. So on this record of trying to remove 1 million people, is she the exact type of person that should be removed at this time? Probably not, when you think about priorities and the safety of this country.
Well, that's the thing, right? So she's arrested during an appointment with immigration services. So is the government argument not just that following the rules won't protect you, but they could work to your detriment?
That's exactly right. And that's what I meant to say when I was saying that these legal pathways are shrinking, such as ending TPS, ending people's parole, picking up people at courthouses when they're showing up for their appointments. That is the exact problem that we're faced right now. The mission of removing people is not meeting the mission of national security and the appropriation of the funds that are given to this agency.
David, Trump and the Republican Party have had the support of active and veteran service members, and Americans overall have strongly supported Americans who protect us, who serve in our armed forces. So politically, strategically, what does this policy buy them to detain the wife of somebody who has been serving his country for 27 years and showed up at an immigration office?
Yeah, politically, I don't think it buys them anything, right? I mean, the administration has a policy of trying to increase the number of deportations for people that entered the country illegally. And so on a strict policy basis, they're getting what they wanted. But one of the reasons why the president's numbers on immigration have taken a nosedive is because, for a lot of voters who were frustrated with the last administration's handling of the border and illegal immigration, what they expected from Trump was to close the border, which he did, but also in terms of a deportation program to go after criminal aliens, go after the worst of the worst, and to essentially leave people alone who were in the country working, paying their taxes, and weren't a public safety threat. And that's been the opposite of what this administration has done. And, obviously what happened in Minnesota and elsewhere where ICE and Border Patrol became violent with both American citizens and illegal immigrants contributed a lot to the president's drop in approval when it comes to immigration in particular, usually one of his highest areas of approval. But just this idea that it was a bait and switch, that it wasn't about going after criminals and making our streets safer, that it was about deportation writ large. Look, maybe that's a public policy that's worth debate and advantageous. Politically, it's not where most Americans are, including Americans who were very concerned and upset with how the previous administration handled the border and illegal immigration.
Well, David, because of the partial government shutdown, I mean, now that the long lines are gone at airports, we've kind of forgotten that's still there. DHS still hasn't been funded, and now Secretary Mark Wayne Mullins is warning that money will soon run out.
That money is dried up if I continue down this path the first week of May, because my payroll through DHS is just over $1.6 billion every 2 weeks. So the money is going extremely fast. And once that happens, there is no emergency funds after that.
Could we be heading to another political showdown because government workers are not getting paid?
Well, it's very possible, but we also need to see what happens with the new reconciliation package that Senate Republicans have dropped this week, right? And they're just going to do a basic appropriation of funds for the government and other things in this package. So if it can get through the Senate in a timely fashion, and if it can get through the House without objection, then this whole thing may be avoided. But you're right to point out the potential political peril here. And I think this is the kind of thing that cuts both ways. Right. On the one hand, the Republicans control all branches. You know, they control the legislative and the executive branches of government. They could get blamed. On the other hand, it's been Democratic objections to funding the Department of Homeland Security that have held things up so far. And so we're just going to have to see how this thing shakes out.
Ellen, speaking of Markwayne Mullin, the question when he took over was whether there would be a refocus on what Trump first said with deportations, right? The worst of the worst. Have you sensed any change since he replaced Kristi Noem? Now, it was less than a month ago, but or do you think it's too soon to judge whether things might change?
It's too soon to judge, and I think the change. Tom Homan is back in control of a lot of things he was sidelined from before, who I knew from his former enforcement, which is important to see exactly how it's done. We haven't really seen it isn't as visible. And it isn't as big as the violations against civil rights of Americans and immigrants. And I think that's what's important to talk about what the Democrats are standing up for with regards to this bill. They're just saying, make it law that you're going to follow the Constitution. They're not saying they don't want to fund DHS, not to mention that DHS is funded already through the big, beautiful bill to 2027. So the $10 million that they're using right now, they also have another big bucket of money that they should also expend to do the airport security if they want to do that. Because they also, we see, it's important to talk about that when we're removing the wife of a military sergeant, we're taking on the expense of holding her in detention and the expense of removing her from the country, which is one that we did not need to bear.
Well, then the emotional impact on members of the service, whether it's the person themselves or the people who they work with, all that plays into it. Eleanor, David Drucker, thank you.